Good afternoon. I wanted to go over some more practical thoughts on taking care of a parent in your home. As I mentioned in my other video, there's a couple of things I just want to reiterate today. One, if you're going to bring a parent into your home to take care of them or for them to live with you, first make sure you talk it over with your siblings and get a plan in order so that way everyone is on the same page while they're living in your home. Secondly, if you don't have siblings, get assistance from some others because you want to keep that parent engaged outside of your home. Thirdly, keep records. There are records that you should keep at your home as well as some things you need to keep with you if in the event of an emergency you need to have access to this quickly. The fourth thing I want to mention to you is that if and when the parent needs assistance with matters other than medical, keep a folder on that as well. This would include any financial information, property, legal documents, insurance. This could be a list of bank accounts and those that are authorized on those accounts. You don't necessarily need to keep account numbers because you certainly don't want this to go into somebody else's hands that would have that information, but at least have the names of the banks and the accounts and who is on those accounts. Also, information on debit cards, credit cards, because if the parent is unable to communicate to you or to handle these things, you want to know which ones are out there and also those that you may have to cancel later on. This would also include listing of insurance policies that the parent has: life insurance, medical insurance, property insurance, supplemental insurance, copies of deeds, wills, titles, powers of attorney, any living will, guardianship papers. All of these things are extremely helpful, and if you've got them all together, it's a lot easier to be able to review over them when it becomes necessary. If the parent has made final arrangements, such as my mother years ago went ahead and went to the funeral home, and she made her arrangements, picked out everything, paid for everything in advance, which was very helpful to us. But you need to have that information handy as well, so that way you'll know who to call and you'll already know what's been discussed. If they haven't done that and the discussion comes up between you and your parent, it's a good thing to go ahead and write that information down. And if possible, get the parent to date and sign it so that way there's no confusion later on. Also, another thing is if there are items in your home that belong to a parent, you want to make sure that you discuss with that parent if anything should happen to you, who do you want to have these items? I would either make a detailed list or you can label them. For example, my mother had some items, and on the bottom of them she'd put a piece of masking tape and had written the name of who she wanted it to go to. Some of those things she had told me that she wanted certain ones to have. Now, she'd started giving some things away several years ago, but there were still things in her home that she had. One of the things that I did was if it was something that a sibling had given her down through the years, then I wanted to make sure that sibling had first choice. And it's good to label those things, to have a list so that you can access it. And these folders and these journals that I mentioned to you that you need to keep them in a secure place. You want to have at least one other family member that knows where to find this information, but you don't want to have it laying out for anyone to be able to access. And if anyone should come into your home, that they would be able to pull this out and use it for any purpose like that. Another thing is if your parent requires assistance with personal needs, when they get to the place where they may need help with feeding or bathing or dressing or anything of that sort, you want to have a detailed list as to what you do in that process. Sometimes what you need to do is even list certain types of soaps or lotions or things that you use, especially if your parent has sensitive skin or there are things that they can and cannot handle. One thing too that would be good is if you have a cart with all these items on it, or a cabinet, something that would be easily to access, so that if something comes up out of the norm or someone else has to do this for you, that they can easily find it. Uh, and even during that time, there comes a time when you may need to solicit help from others. That came to a point with us that I was unable to do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it uh, required, in order for me to continue to work and do other things that I needed to do, it required me setting up a schedule with my other siblings to come in and do it. So it's good to have that information written down so it's easy for them to access and look to. Also, you want to keep a journal of the medication that's administered. This will also help you so that if someone else comes in, they can easily look at that journal and say, well, at 2 o'clock, this medication was given to the parent. This helps especially in the middle of the night, because when it got to the place we had to sit with my mother 24 hours a day, it made it helpful for those that were sitting at night to know what had been done up to that point without having to call someone. Another thing too that came up was when hospice was called in and we were using their services. A lot of times the nurse would come in and they would want to see the medication that we had administered. They'd want to see what was going on with the parent since the last visit. So this makes it very helpful and very easy, because especially if you get to the point where you're administering a lot of medication, it sometimes can get confusing and you may forget. There were times when my mother was in an emergency situation and we were administering medication, such as heart medication, nitroglycerin tablets, that there were time frames in which you do it. I'd have somebody writing this down, as we'd say, I administered this at this time. Or either if it was where that I was by myself, I would try to make it a point that in between those breaks to write that down so we knew. Take time for yourself and your family. I can tell you that with taking care of a parent, burnout comes quickly. You'll notice burnout when you start becoming easily agitated or frustrated or angered. You see a change in your appetite or a change in your energy level. You begin to feel like you're trapped, or you're depressed, or you feel a case of hopelessness. Don't get trapped in that. You need to watch out for that and make sure you talk to someone about that, so that way you have some time to yourself. You need to break away. Not only does your body need rest, but your mind needs rest. Your emotions need rest. And the only way to do that is to break away. But also there came a time when I was beginning to feel a lot of guilt. I would feel the need that I needed of getting away, maybe spending time with my husband, going to town, taking a drive right by myself, doing something so that I could break away for a little while. Well, then I began to feel guilty because I wasn't asking the parent to go with me. And if it was with me and my husband, then I didn't ask them and I left and went with my husband, I started feeling guilty because I didn't ask, or either I'd ask the parent to go with me, then I'd feel guilty because I wasn't there with my husband. I felt like I was in a corner and I had no place to turn. There was no win situation. This guilt is something that sometimes we will impose on ourselves because we want to do what's best. We love our parent and we want to take good care of them. Sometimes the enemy of our soul will place that guilt on us. God does not put guilt on you. Guilt prevents you from resting. Guilt prevents your mind from resting. Guilt prevents your emotions from resting. It keeps you in a state of where you cannot rest. You're uptight and you're not rejuvenated. You're not refreshed. Give this guilt to God. I'll go ahead and tell you right off the bat. Give it to God. I kept carrying it, and it began to build on me until finally I've almost reached a breaking point. Don't let that happen to you. Talk to God. Talk to a family member. Talk to a counselor. Talk to someone, because that will just really drag you down. Also, sometimes guilt can be imposed on you by the parent. They don't mean to. They do it unknowingly. But because the parent is in a situation where they feel like they are losing control, or they are afraid of things changing, they will do everything they can to try to keep control of that and try to keep things the same, because that is a fear that sets in on them that they are trying to prevent. And so they will unknowingly place guilt on you. Don't let that happen either. Again, reassure them everything is okay, everything is fine, that just because you need to break away for a little bit is not because you're not going to come back, and not because you don't want to care for them, but because you need just a break. You just need a break. Now, in the case of my mother, I couldn't tell her that, because that in turn created some other things. But what I could do was just let her know this is what we're going to do. And then I would pray and ask God to help her to understand, and also help me. These are still a few more practical steps and practical things to think about. Again, everybody's situation is different. Every parent is different. But you can take these things and tailor them to what is best for you. And again, know God is there with you. God will help you through this if you will rely on Him. But you need to rely on Him. Again, these are practical thoughts, and I hope it helps you. God bless you.